I was just wondering, with the circumstance with the legislation about the transgender, or about going into the restrooms and causing a disturbance, I could easily imagine a scenario where like a trans woman goes into a woman's restroom, and then if somehow that fact is ever discovered or whatever, or called upon, the women in the restroom in turn causing a disturbance. Could that ever, like, how would you protect yourself against that in that situation? Because it seems like something that could, like, kind of backfire depending on, or not backfire, but, you know, be complicated depending on who exactly is in the restroom and what exactly they're doing to escalate the situation.
Well, that's very real possibility. You know, some trans woman could go into the restroom and she doesn't pass very well, and so some woman decides to challenge her. And if I were that trans woman and if I could hold it, I would immediately walk out. Now, just to let y'all know, I've used the women's restroom twice before y'all got here. I don't know if anybody was offended by that, but I plan on using it again before I leave. It's a fact-specific question. If somebody gets their underwear in a wad, and I use that term a lot because that's essentially what's going on, and it saves me from saying ugly words that don't appear well in the videotape. I can't help that. But if the transgender person is not causing a disturbance, is not doing it in a manner to cause a disturbance, but if that trans woman gets arrested, she's just going to have to take it to a jury trial and explain what happened and hope the jury agrees with her. And so far, they have. Yes?
The night that Hero was defeated...
Just a second. Stand up. Everybody wants to hear you.
Yeah. The night that Hero was defeated, Mayor Parker said that she didn't think it was ever right to put someone's civil or human rights to a popular vote, to a vote, period. Do you think she was right, and should she have said that?
Yes, I think it was right, and yes, I think she should say that. In 1985, if y'all didn't live in Houston, we had another election where the city council had voted to non-discrimination with respect to hiring and other stuff that had to do with sexual orientation. I think it was just sexual orientation at the time. And it went to a vote, and it was pushed, and it was defeated. I think it was defeated because so many people, as well as allies, were in the closet, and that is a very good segue. There are not enough LGBT people to affect change. We have to have straight allies. And we just have to be. Something that I noticed the other day when I was doing a PFLAG is that some of the PFLAG people had a safety pin, like you diaper, children's diapers or anything else with. They had a safety pin pinned to their collar. And I asked what that was. That is a symbol that you are a safe person to come out to. You are a safe, straight person, so that someone who's in a new situation and isn't sure who's friendly and isn't sure who isn't friendly can approach that person and come out to them. We can't make it without those of you out here who are supportive straight people, who think that what is going on with respect to the hate that's being aimed at us, or aimed at black people, or aimed at Muslim people, or aimed at Jewish people, or aimed at Hispanic people, or aimed at any of the other people who were targeted during the last year and are being targeted especially now with all the hate groups. My own alma mater in a couple of weeks is going to have a white supremacist stand and speak on the campus. Anyway, y'all have got to stand up, and you've got to let your friends, your fellow students, even if you don't know them very well, if they are black and you're not, if they are Hispanic and you're not, if they are Muslim and you're not, you've got to let them know that you don't like the current ugliness that's being pushed. and if they're gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, or intersex, and you're not, you need to come out of the closet as being a nice person. Most people won't do that. Come out of the closet about being a nice person. In my slides, I talked about the Christian Legal Society that I had fought in law school. When I went to law school, I was obviously out of the closet. And there were a very few people who were nice to me. And I reached out to the Christian Legal Society, and I got slapped back and mistreated for almost 3 years. But most of the students, they were going to school, they had jobs, they had families, they had other things to do, and so they said, you know, Phyllis is just a problem I don't need to deal with. And so they just kind of went on their way and ignored me. Well, at almost the end of those 3 years, I'd had a craw full, and so I sat down. We didn't have laptops or computers then. I mean, this was the old days. But I hand wrote a 7-page pattern of practice of all the crap that I had gone through at the hands of the Christian Legal Society over the past 3 years. And I gave a copy to the Dean of Students, and I made 3 other copies, and I gave a couple to my friends. And I want you to know that thing went viral. That thing went viral. Nobody really knew what I'd been going through. And not only did the school put them on probation, but students who hadn't spoken to me, students who hadn't looked at me, students who hadn't been ugly, I wasn't there. The last couple of weeks ago, hey Phyllis, how are you doing? Hey Phyllis, how are you doing? Good to see you, Phyllis. I just got whiplash from all the people who came out of the closet and decided to be nice to me. And when I went across the stage to get my law degree, I was fully expecting somebody, some group, some couple of people to make nasty comments or nasty sounds or something. It was dead silence. I walked across the stage just like everybody else and got my law degree. And that's because those of you came out of the closet that you're a nice person. Why can't you come out of the closet that you're a nice person? That's all you got to do. Tell somebody who's not your race, tell somebody who's not your religion, tell somebody who's not your sexual orientation, tell somebody who's not your gender identity that you are their friend, that you support them. That doesn't mean you want to date them. That doesn't mean that you want to go out to dinner with them, but that they're welcome. Okay? So that's my message. If you don't get anything else out of today, that's my message. Any other question? Yeah.
Sorry. I just wanted to ask, why do you think it is, I don't want to speak for everybody, but in our generation it's much more rare for people to be anti-LGBT. Why do you think it is so prevalent in your generation and our parents' generation? Well,
you guys grew up with us. You guys grew up with gay students alliances in your high school. Some of you did. Some of you knew or met gay or lesbian or bisexual people or even transgender people now. We've been in the movies. We've been on television. We're on Netflix. And so you younger people are getting a chance to think about who we are. You're attending this lecture thanks to Dr. Barr. Okay? And so you're going to go home and I would be very surprised if every one of you sometime this week doesn't talk to somebody about this lecture. And I think every one of you is going to have something positive to say. Whereas when I grew up, and as people who are kind of in their 40s or 50s right now grew up, the only thing we knew about gay people was that they were criminal, that the Psychological Association said they were criminal, that there were laws that they're still, even though it's unconstitutional, the Texas sodomy statute remains on the books, and the Texas legislature will not repeal that law. Now, why don't y'all get angry with your people that go to Austin and say, oh, come on, get rid of this stupid law. And up until recently, we couldn't marry. Now, I married my wife, my second wife, when I was still a guy. She knew what might happen, and after 3 years, she said, you're going crazy. You've got to be who you are. And so 40 years ago, this past September, I went full-time in 1976. It's probably before most of your parents were even born. But it was hell. It was awful. And as you know, I lost my military career. I also lost my engineering career. I was blackballed. I couldn't get work in this city. And I went to law school mostly to learn how to defend myself, because our house was being egged, our tires were being slashed. On Halloween, the day after Halloween, we always went out in the backyard to make sure there wasn't any poison that our dogs might get into. Guess when we got all of the obscene phone calls? What holidays did we get the obscene phone calls for the first 3 years after I transitioned? Come on. Christmas, yes. And Easter. That's right. That's when they came. But I'll tell you what, when the neighbors found out I'd become a lawyer, they told their kids to leave us alone. And my wife and I stayed in our house because we had a mortgage and we didn't want to move. We couldn't afford to move. And so the bad neighbors, and there were a few good neighbors, but the bad neighbors either got over it, moved, or died. And about 12 years ago, I was elected to the board of the Civic Club. I live in Westbury, Southwest Houston. And I was elected to the board. And I was elected 9 consecutive times. Then, because I was a judge, a Houston judge, and I had conflicts of interest sometimes when the Civic Club would want to challenge the city, I had to quit the Civic Club board. But things change. Things change. Because each and every one of you is going to make a commitment, because I'm charging you to make that commitment, that you're going to start coming out of the closet about being a nice person to someone who is not your race, who is not your religion, who is not your sexual orientation or gender identity. You're going to do it. And you're going to make this campus really neat. I don't have anything else to say. I think I've gone over time. Thoroughly enjoyed it. There's my email. There's my website. Get a copy of the flash drive and get a copy of the PowerPoint. For those who keep pushing to require transgender folks to use restrooms and locker rooms that matches their biological sex or their sex at birth, remember, guys, I asked you, do you really want me in the restroom with you? Okay, here's who's going into the women's restroom.